Dear viewers, the show will begin in 2 minutes. The show will begin in 1 minute. The show is about to begin. Grab a drink, a snack, and please sit back, relax, and enjoy this show.
Please like and leave a comment, and share this video.
Welcome to the live show 84, Trust Broken, What's One's Word Worth? Today is the 2nd of October 2024 and we're coming to you from Minsk, Belarus. Please hit that thumbs up as this helps the channel, and if you're also new here, please subscribe. When you get time, please share the video link in your social media as this will help us grow. This morning we covered the Vice President debate in the United States, and if you have not seen that, you can see it on this channel if you are watching now. And now let's get on with the show.
Could be wrong, I could be right.
Trust is the foundation upon which all human relationships are built. It's a fragile thing, something that's easily broken yet painstakingly difficult to rebuild. When we give our word to someone, we are offering them a promise, a bond that says, you can rely on me. Whether it's personal relationships, politics, or the media, the integrity of one's word shapes the quality of our connections, the faith we place in systems, and ultimately how we navigate the world. In personal relationships, trust is sacred. We open ourselves up to those we care about, friends, family, partners, hoping that in return they will honor that vulnerability with honesty. When someone gives their word, it's not just about commitment to a task or a promise made, it's about being seen, respected, and valued. But when trust is broken, whether through lies, betrayal, or failing to keep a promise, it cuts deep. The person who was once a source of safety becomes a source of pain. Rebuilding that trust is a rebuilding of a shattered mirror. You might piece it back together, but it will never reflect the same way again. In politics, the stakes of trust are even higher. Politicians are public servants entrusted with the responsibility of representing the people and making decisions on our behalf. When they give their word, they are not just making personal commitments, but public pledges to millions of lives. Yet we know all too well how often that trust is broken. When politicians lie, fail to keep their promises, or prioritize personal gain over the greater good, they erode the public's faith in government. It's not just a betrayal of individuals, but of the entire democratic process. Over time, each broken promise chips away at the belief that the system can ever work in the people's favour, and cynicism replaces hope. Then there's the media, the supposed gatekeeper of truth. We turn to the media for information, trusting that it will give us a fair, accurate portrayal of the world. But when mainstream media distorts facts, selects reports, or outright deceives, it breaks a sacred contract with the public. We rely on journalists and news organisations to hold power accountable to the watchdogs of truth. When they fail in that duty, the damage ripples throughout society. A misinformed public is easily manipulated. Trust in the media, once lost, leads people to retreat into echo chambers, questioning the legitimacy of every news source, fostering a society where facts become subjective and truth is impossible to pin down. Whether in personal relationships, politics, or the media, breaking one's word is not just an individual failing, it has a profound systematic impact. When trust is shattered, it creates an atmosphere of uncertainty and suspicion. We become wary of commitments, doubtful of promises, and unsure of where or whom to place our faith. In the end, trust once broken becomes an empty shell of what it was. We can rebuild, we can recover, but its scars remain. And when those who hold influence in our personal lives, in politics, or in the media fail to honour their word, they not only break trust, they erode the very foundations upon which relationships, governance, and society are built. And I may be wrong, and I may be right. Please leave your comments of what you think below.
Could be wrong. I could be right.
So where am I going with the concept of trust broken and what is one's word worth? Well, in the geopolitical landscape, it's witnessing a curious phenomena where the concept of gentlemen's agreements with the West seems to be backfiring, and not just for one, but for multiple nations, including Iran and Russia. Iran's deception. Iran president recently expressed a sentiment of having been misled by the West, particularly the United States and Europe. This admission came in light of expectations for a ceasefire in Gaza, contingent on Iran not retaliating for the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, a prominent Hamas leader in Tehran. The delay in Iran's response sparked speculation, only for the Iranian president to reveal a perceived betrayal. On Russia's historical perspective, this situation echoes Russia's past experience with the West. Historical agreements such as NATO's promise not to expand eastward post Germany's reunification, or the Minsk agreements meant to de-escalate tensions in Ukraine, have been points of contention, with Russia feeling deceived. Even the inclusion of human rights clauses in the Helsinki Accord has been viewed as hindsight as a tool used by the West for internal destabilization within the USSR. The West strategy in these instances suggests a pattern where Western diplomatic strategies might involve commitments that are later interpreted as broken by non-Western actors. This could be seen as part of a broader geopolitical strategy to maintain or extend influence. Challenges for the anti-Western bloc are, despite these perceived deceptions for nations like Russia and Iran, continue to engage diplomatically with the West. China is also having the same problem with Taiwan, where the US has said there would be two Chinas, but the US keeps continuously arming and pushing independence for Taiwan. This persistence stems from the lack of cohesive unity among nations opposing Western hegemony. While the West operates under the discipline of often dictated by the US foreign policy, the anti-Western coalition is still forming, with varied interests and historical grievances. So what are the future directions of the ongoing dialogue, often marked by mistrust, might eventually lead to these nations towards a more unified front, like BRICS? Not just resistance, but also proposing alternative global orders. However, reaching this point involves navigating through numerous setbacks and strategic defeats, which might be inevitable in the quest for a new balance of power. The conclusion is we're witnessing what might be termed as an objective historical process, where nations, in their struggle against what they perceive as Western neocolonialism, face setbacks that could eventually lead to a more solidified approach, or conversely, further fragmentation. The journey towards finding a common ground within this bloc, strong enough to challenge the West's global influence, is fraught with complexities and will likely define international relations for years to come. This situation underscores the intricate dance of international diplomacy, where trust, once lost, becomes the hardest currency to regain, driving nations into alliances or confrontations that are shaping the global order. And then there's the fractured trust of the UK Labour policies and scandals under PM Starmer. In the wake of the 2024 UK general election, which saw Labour's landslide victory, a political landscape was ripe for change. Keir Starmer promising a reset aimed for the government characterised by integrity, competence and drastic departure from the perceived moral and political decay of his predecessors. However, within months, the narrative around Starmer's government has swiftly shifted, spotlighting an erosion of public trust due to a series of policy missteps and personal. Starmer's policies, especially those touching on economic recovery, climate action and social welfare, were intended to signal a new dawn. However, decisions like the removal of the winter fuel allowance, which is going to freeze over 4,000 pensioners to death, or the significant overseas climate aid amidst domestic economic challenges, have been met with a public backlash. This reaction underscores a growing sentiment of disillusionment. Policies meant to showcase global leadership or economic prudence, but have instead spotlighted a disconnect between the government decisions and public needs. And there's the scandal of freebies. Perhaps the most damaging to Starmer's image of integrity has been the freebies scandal. High-profile Labour figures, including Starmer himself, have been implicated in accepting gifts and benefits from donors, which critics argue blurs the lines of influence. From luxury holidays to expensive concert tickets, these incidents have fueled accusations of hypocrisy, particularly from a government that has campaigned on anti-corruption and transparency. The public's reaction has been one of betrayal, questioning how the government, so recently in power on the promise of change, could so quickly fall into patterns of reminiscent of past administrations. The concept of trust, once considered a fundamental aspect of political life, seems increasingly fractured. Starmer's initial pledge to restore public faith in politics by cracking down on cronyism and enhancing transparency has backfired, as his administration's actions have been perceived as contrary to these ideals. This breach of trust isn't merely about policy or personal conduct, it's about the expectation of moral leadership that has been evidently not been met. In conclusion, the Starmer government's early tenure seems the trust broken, and it isn't just in policies or in individuals, but in the very idea of political renewal. Examining the trust broken with the Biden-Harris administration involves looking at a variety of policy decisions, public statements and political moves that have drawn criticism and skepticism from various segments of the public. Immigration policies and border management. Despite promises for a more humane approach to immigration, the administration's handling of the US southern border has been contentious. Critics argue that while policies like reinstating DIDDY or attempting to close family detention centres reflect a compassionate approach, the continuation of Title 42 under legal challenges and the failure to pass more comprehensive immigration reform have led to perceptions of broken promises or ineffective policy implementation. The Republican-led resolution denouncing the administration's border management underscores this loss of trust among opposition and among voters who expected clearer and faster action. The student loan debt relief. The administration's efforts towards student debt relief, while ambitious, has been criticised for their slow rollout, legal challenges, and perceived by those expecting more immediate or comprehensive relief. The promise of debt relief, followed by a complex process of rulemaking and eligibility criteria, has led to some question the administration's ability to deliver on straightforward campaign promises. On the foreign policy and international relations, while the Biden's foreign policy aimed at reinforcing alliances and countering authoritarianism, actions like the handling of the Gaza situation or trade policies have highlighted the difference between Biden and Harris. These differences, especially if they lead to perceived policy shifts or inconsistencies, contribute to the sense of unpredictability or lack of unified front, affecting trust in the administration's international strategy. And of course then there's the withdrawal from the 2024 election. Perhaps one of the most significant blows of trust was Biden's decision to withdraw from the 2024 election. This move, unprecedented in recent times for the incumbent after securing nomination, raised questions about the reasons behind his withdrawal. While presented as a move in the party's and nationals' best interest, it led to speculation about his health, the state of the campaign, and internal dynamics of the Democratic Party, all of which could erode public trust in the administration's stability and transparency. And of course then there's the economic policies. Despite achievements like Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, criticism arises from how these policies are perceived to benefit certain sectors or states over others, or not delivering fast enough on promised jobs and economic recovery. The gap between policy announcement and tangible benefits to the average American can foster disillusionment with high interest rates and high inflation. The public communication engagement of the administration strategy, especially around complex issues like climate change initiatives or economic recovery plans, has sometimes been criticised for lacking in clarity and direct benefit explanation for the public. This can lead to mistrust, especially when policy intent doesn't translate immediately into public perception of improvement or fairness. The broken trust with the Biden-Harris administration therefore stems from a combination of unmet expectations, policy execution challenges, perceived inconsistencies, and significant political decisions like Biden's withdrawal from the election race. Each of these points reflects broader themes of accountability, transparency, and the effectiveness of governance, which are critical for maintaining public trust in any administration. And there's a complete loss of trust in most governments in Australia, Canada and EU, for example. Australia. There's been political scandals and corruption, recent sentiments highlighting a significant erosion of trust due to perceived corruption and political missteps. The example of payments for non-existent companies or questionable financial decisions, like those attributed to high-profile figures, showcases how financial management can erode public trust. There's a growing sentiment that government policies, especially those related to the economy, recovery, or social issues, do not reflect the immediate needs or values of the average citizen. The introduction of what might be seen as politically correct policies over practical solutions has been criticised, leading to the disconnect between the government and the governed. The handling of various crises, from economic challenges to international relations, has been scrutinised. Public perception often focuses on government's response speed, effectiveness and transparency, all of which have been found lacking in various incidents, further diminishing trust. In Canada, the political scandals and misconduct has also been around. Trust has been significantly impacted by scandals involving major figures like the Prime Minister himself, and allegations of interference of democratic processes such as elections. These incidents not only question the integrity of leaders, but also the institutions meant to uphold democracy. The Canadian economic and social policies on the management of these issues, including inflation, housing crises and visa backlogs, underlines government perceived as out of touch with the citizens' daily struggles. This misalignment in policy, effectiveness and public need breeds distrust. And of course, the media and government relations and the financial support of these media outlets has led to questions about media independence, with any governmental criticism or error now viewed through the lenses of potential bias, fueling a broader distrust in both the media and the government. Then there's the European Union. This bureaucracy is out of touch with policies. The EU's governance structure, often seen as overly bureaucratic, has been criticised for policies that seem distant from the concerns of its citizens. Decisions that affect sovereignty, economic policies, or immigration have led to a feeling of being governed by the entity that's not accountable. The economic policies and austerity of the handling of these economic crises, particularly through austerity measures imposed on member states, has led to significant public outcry and the loss of trust. The perception is that these policies benefit the stability of the EU at the expense of local economies and social welfare. And there's a widespread feeling of democratic deficit, where key decisions are made by unelected officials or by a process that feels opaque to the average citizen. This perception undermines the trust in the EU's democratic legitimacy. And of course, there's the migration and security policies on these that have been particularly divisive, with differing national sentiments often at odds with EU-wide directives. This conflict has fueled populist movements questioning the EU's ability to manage one of the most contentious issues facing its member states. And the general observations and transparency of the accountability across all entities, there's a recurring theme of lack of transparency and accountability when the governments or institutions are perceived to operate in the shadows. Trust naturally diminishes. The failure to engage generally with public sentiment, whether through policy making or communication, underscores the loss of trust. The governments that seem out of touch or dismissive of public concerns create a fertile ground for distrust. The handling of economic policies, particularly those affecting social welfare, housing and employment, has significantly trust implications. When economic strategies fail to uplift the general populace or the wealth disparities widen, the government's capability and intention come into question, leading to disillusionment. The rule of law and the judicial independence, trust in government is closely tied to the perception of justice and fairness. In instances where there's a hint of political interference in legal matters, or if laws are seen as unfairly applied, this erodes the belief in the system's impartiality, further distancing citizens from their government. The handling of cultural issues, identity politics, or what's often termed as political correctness, can annihilate segments of the population, feeling their value or traditions are undervalued or attacked. This cultural divide often increases distrust, particularly when policies or statements from the government are seen as favouring one group or another. And the effectiveness in managing crises within the health pandemics, economic downturns or natural disasters is a litmus test for trust. Governments that are slow to respond, show incompetence, or appear to prioritise public policies over people's welfare and lose credibility quickly. The loss of trust in these governments across Australia, Canada and EU stems from a complex interplay of transparency issues, policy misalignment and public needs, perceived or real corruption, and the failure to maintain effective communication and empathy with their citizens. Trust once eroded is challenging to rebuild, requiring not just policy correction but a profound shift in how governments engage with and serve their publics. The path to restoration involves greater openness, accountability, and the genuine commitment to addressing the grievances and aspirations of all citizens rather than just a vocal or politically influential minority. This requires leaders who bridge divides, foster unity, and above all act with integrity and foresight, qualities that are bedrock of trust in governance. So let's look at the lies and naivety that led to Nasrallah's demise and the broken trust. Here's how Israel eliminated Nasrallah and other high-ranking personnel. Netanyahu assured Lebanon of a ceasefire if Iran refrained from attacking Israel. The West negotiated with Iran, warning that any retaliation against Israel would jeopardize the ceasefire. And of course Iran, believing in the deal, told Nasrallah that the ceasefire was imminent and that he was safe. So Nasrallah attended a large meeting with the commanders, including the Iranian officials, under the impression that it was secure, likely discussing the ceasefire agreement. Then Israel took advantage of this, launching 80 bunker buster bombs at the meeting and killing them all. The new Iranian president, trusting the promise of the West, and especially Netanyahu, was ultimately deceived. Now Israel is celebrating. Israel likely anticipated that Nasrallah would gather for a major meeting with Iranian officials to discuss the ceasefire. Israeli drones surveilled the command center until Nasrallah's arrival, then struck, leveling the entire location. Finnish President Alexander Stubb essentially confirmed this narrative. Netanyahu indicated he would accept the ceasefire proposal from Lebanon, but upon arriving in New York, his rhetoric changed completely. The West promised a ceasefire if Iran refrained from retaliating against Israel, and those promises from the American and European leaders to the ceasefire in exchange of our silence after the killing of Haniyeh were outright lies, complained the Iranian president. A total of 84 bunker buster bombs obliterated the complex, leaving nothing behind. Now Israel's Security Minister Ben-Gvir is celebrating Nasrallah's elimination as the entire Israeli government rejoices over Netanyahu's cunning maneuver. Let's look at this, how it panned out.
Friday evening in the southern suburb. a secret meeting of Hezbollah leaders in their fortified underground headquarters. Israel's eyes in the sky monitor the site. Tel Aviv's decision to assassinate was taken last Monday, and today is the implementation. Information reaching Israel states that among those present are Hassan Nasrallah and Nasrallah. It was on target date, monitoring. The man entered the compound of 6 embangs. Israel does not know in which fortification the meeting will take place underground or above it, but what is certain is that he is present in this area along with other leaders at approximately 6 p.m. Beirut time. The southern earthquake, 80 Mk-84 bombs dropped from the sky via F-15 aircraft. I and the buildings have become. It seemed as though the ground itself had not been completely leveled, sparing no signs of life inside. As for the perpetrators of the attack, they immediately announced that the chance of najat for those who were in the building was non-existent.
This is where the building and the bunkers were.
هاي بنيتك يا علي الموسى.
The Financial Times in the UK reports that Israeli intelligence spent years meticulously gathering information to identify Hezbollah fighters, their locations and their leadership structure. Israel's military intelligence agency, Amman, employed a wide range of surveillance tools including spy satellites, drones, cyber hacking and surveillance cameras. They even tapped into the microphones on TV remotes and the phones of fighters' relatives. Once a fighter was identified, their movements were tracked and recorded in detailed database. Obituaries and funerals were also used to map out their networks, helping to identify key commanders and associates. And according to the report, Israel was prepared to assassinate Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah as early as last year, but ultimately abandoned the plan due to intervention by the United States. Former Iranian President Mohammad Ahmadinejad disclosed in an interview with CNN Turk that the head of the Iranian intelligence unit tasked with countering MOSSAD activities was in fact an Israeli MOSSAD agent. This revelation, according to Ahmadinejad, extended to approximately 20 other operatives within his unit, implicating them in significant operations against Iran. These agents were allegedly involved in stealing nuclear documents, crucial documents related to Iran's nuclear program, which were reportedly pilfered, impacting Iran's nuclear secrecy. The assassination of Iranian nuclear scientists, which has been a point of tension and speculation for years, was also attributed to this group. After their operations, these agents reportedly fled to Israel, highlighting the extent of Mossad's infiltration into Iranian intelligence. His comments not only point to a significant breach in Iran's security, but also underline the ongoing intelligence war between Iran and Israel, particularly concerning nuclear capabilities and security. This disclosure, if true, represents a major intelligence coup for MOSSAD and considerable embarrassment for Iranian's intelligence community, showcasing the deep and complex spy games played in the region. Let's watch this.
18 Haziran'da yapılacak olan Cumhurbaşkanlığı seçimleri öncesinde adaylığı reddedilen Mahmut Ahmadinejad açıklamalarına devam ediyor. Son olarak İran İstihbarat Bakanlığı'nda İsrail'e karşı koyma biriminin en yüksek sorumlusunun İsrail ajanı olduğunu iddia etti.
İran eski Cumhurbaşkanı ve 18 Haziran'daki seçim için adaylığı reddedilen Mahmut Ahmadinejad ifşaatlarına devam ediyor. Ahmadinejad bu kez verdiği röportajda İran İstihbarat Bakanlığı'nda İsrail'e karşı koyma biriminin en yüksek sorumlusunun İsrail ajanı olduğunu söyledi. Ahmadinejad, İsrail'in hükümetin özellikle de istihbarat ve güvenlik birimlerinin en üst kademelerine kadar etkili olduğunu belirtti. İsrail'in İran içinde karmaşık operasyonlar düzenleyebildiğini ve çok önemli nükleer belgeleri en hassas birimlerden çaldığını söyledi ve bunun İran yönetimi içindeki İsrail'in geniş etkisinin ve ajan ağının halen sessiz olmasıyla gerçekleştiğini belirtti. Geçtiğimiz Perşembe günü İsrail Dış İstihbarat Birimi MOSSAD Direktörü Yossi Cohen de İran'ın gizli nükleer belgelerini 2 yıllık bir çalışmayla hiçbiri İsrailli ve Yahudi olmayan 20 kişilik İranlı ekiple ele geçirdiklerini söylemişti. Ahmadinejad'ın açıklamaları Cohen'in açıklamalarının ardından geldi.
And Hezbollah's deputy chief says the resistance group is ready for a ground confrontation with Israel.
On any opportunity or choice, and we are ready. If the Israelis want to enter on a ground offensive, the forces of resistance are ready in order to begin a ground confrontation and a ground battle. We have prepared and we are ready. And with God's support and with confidence in God, we are confident that the Israeli enemy will not achieve its objectives and we will be victorious after this battle.
And it looks like the Israeli military commenced what it was described as a limited ground operation in southern Lebanon, targeting infrastructure positions linked to Hezbollah. This move follows weeks of escalating tensions, including intense airstrikes across Lebanon. The operation coincides with reports of airstrikes in the southern suburbs of Beirut. These attacks have reportedly caused significant casualties, with Lebanon's health ministry confirming at least 90 deaths in the last 24 hours and 172 injuries from the ongoing strikes. Over 1 million Lebanese have been displaced due to these conflicts. In Syria, the Israeli Air Force conducted attacks in Damascus, particularly in the western districts, leading to civilian casualties. This represents a widening of the conflict's reach. Hezbollah's response, in retaliation, or perhaps in coordination with these events, Hezbollah launched a barrage of rockets targeting Israeli settlements in the western Galilee, including Zaret, Negev, and Shatala. Approximately 135 rockets were fired in the concentrated period post-midnight. The broader implications of the ground operation in Lebanon, paired with strikes in Syria and Hezbollah's rocket attacks, paints a picture of a region teetering on the brink of wider conflict. This escalation not only threatens regional stability, but also underscores the complexity of Israeli-Hezbollah conflict now spilling over into other areas. And the international reactions, while specifically to these latest developments haven't been detailed here, the global community has been watching closely with calls for de-escalation and concerns over humanitarian impact of the conflict. This situation underscores the volatile nature of the Mideast, where military actions can quickly escalate, affecting not only combatants but civilian populations across multiple countries. The international community's challenge lies in navigating these conflicts towards peace while addressing the root causes of such violence. And what are the options for Hezbollah? They might employ a strategy reminiscent of their tactics during the 2006 conflict. Here's a rewrite reflecting that insight. Hezbollah is likely to let the Israeli Defense Forces advance into Lebanese territory, potentially setting up an ambush similar to their actions in 2006. This approach makes strategic sense given Hezbollah's lack of heavy military equipment compared to Israel's arsenal, indicating a return to guerrilla warfare tactics. By allowing the IDF to penetrate Lebanese soil, Hezbollah could set up stage for an environment where their knowledge of the terrain and guerrilla warfare skills could be leveraged effectively. Without tanks or heavy artillery or air support to match Israel's forces, Hezbollah's strength lies in mobility, concealment and surprise attacks, using the landscape to their advantage. Drawing from past encounters, especially in 2006, Hezbollah demonstrated effectiveness in using such tactics, making it a logical continuation of their military doctrine. This approach not only aims to mitigate Israeli technology and military superiority, but also to impose a high cost for territorial incursion, potentially influencing the broader geopolitical dynamics of the region. Vladislav Shurigin, drawing from the recent events in the Middle East, where Israeli military operations significantly weakened Hezbollah by targeting its leadership, including Hassan Nasrallah, offers a stark critic and lessons for Russia's approach in its conflict with Ukraine. The lesson for Russia, he said, serves up a wake-up call for the Russian leadership, highlighting the inefficiency of Russia's military strategy in Ukraine. He points out that while Ukraine has escalated its military capabilities over 31 months, Russia has failed to advance significantly or decisively in its objective. He emphasizes that throughout history, targeting the enemy's political and military leadership has been a fundamental to warfare. This approach, he argues, incapacitates the opponent, likening it to cutting off the snake's head. Israel's actions against Hezbollah illustrate how effectively cutting off the head of the organization can disrupt its operations, suggesting that such a strategy could similarly benefit Russian efforts in Ukraine. Shurigin criticizes Russia's so-called special operation for its ambiguity, special operation for its vagueness and lack of decisive action against Ukraine's leadership, which he sees as prolonging the conflict unnecessarily. His point underscores that Russia's potential to achieve victory might hinge on adopting a more aggressive strategy aimed at decapitating Ukraine's command structure rather than engaging in a drawn-out attritional warfare. This perspective from him not only reflects the tactical lessons from the Mideast, but also critiques the broader geopolitical strategies at play, suggesting a shift towards more decisive military actions to achieve clear strategic objectives. On October 1st, 2024, Iran launched an extensive missile attack on Israel labelled as Operation True Promise 2, firing approximately over 181 missiles in response to the assassination of key figures from Hezbollah, Hamas and the Iranian military. This barrage was not only a significant escalation but an ongoing conflicts, but also represented Iran's direct military engagement with Israel, bypassing proxy groups. The missiles targeted various parts of Israel, with a significant activity reported over Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Let's have a look at these launches. This is seen from an aircraft flying over, airliner. Passenger took these. And what was the actual damage sustained by Israel? As we'll see in these videos in a second of the missiles landing, the infrastructure damage. The attack resulted in visible damage, particularly hitting schools, in Gradera and causing structural damage in a restaurant in Tel Aviv. These incidents are combined by both imagery and reports on the ground, showcasing the physical impact of the missiles. Israel's advanced air defense system, including Iron Dome, Arrow 2 and Arrow 3, were instrumental in intercepting some of these missiles, but the sheer volume of the missiles meant that they penetrated these defenses. There was at least one civilian casualty reported, and that was a Palestinian due to debris or an interceptor fragment falling on him. And of course there was the military targets, which we'll just see.
וואו, וואו, וואו. עשרות טילים.
כולם לרדת. אני נמצא בצפון יעקב. רואה שעירותים מעל הראש שלנו. שבילי, יורים מכיוון שבת. כיוון מכיוון שבת. תשעים ושלוש. שם חזר בחוץ, שכנס למרחב מוגן.
Okay, guys, we gotta get off the roof. These are coming down right next to us here. They're coming down. One just about. We gotta go inside.
As if that'd make any difference.
רכבת! יואו, מה זה? What the hell? Oh my god, bro! What the heck? זה נופל? מה זה? אימא'לה! What the fuck? Listen! Yo! Yo! Yo! What the fuck? What the fuck, bro?
تفضل.
Military targets. The missiles were aimed at military and security installations. Through the extent of the damage of those targets remains under detailed military assessment, but what you're about to see this video is the MOSSAD HQ was completely destroyed, And then after this you'll see an airfield where F-35s were kept, and that has sustained extensive damage, with reports of up to 20 to 25 F-35s destroyed. This is supposed to be what's left of the MOSSAD headquarters. And this is the base where the F-35s were. And these are the missiles landing on it.
يا ابو كلن على المطار اقسم بالله يا ابو مكسرهن يا ابو المطار ارجع
This is the airfield as well, getting hit. And this one's interesting. This is seems to be a hypersonic missile, as fast as you'll see it coming in, just on the bottom left there.
دمر الدنيا هيو نيو دمر الدنيا فرسلية نزل فرسلية هيو فوق راسي يا عيال.
It is now reported that the USA and an unnamed country, most likely the United Kingdom, requested Israel from not attacking Iran last night, as the US is currently working on creating a coalition to jointly attack Iran and defend Israel at the same time. One of the US's priorities is to secure the Straits of Hormuz after the attack on Iran begins. If true, this will escalate and maybe draw in other countries helping Iran, and also all US and Western bases in the Middle East will be attacked. Yemen has already stated they will help Iran if this happens. And what will Iran's friends do, like Russia and China? Will they come into the fight? Will this end up a global war? Is this where it starts? Armageddon? The New York Times reports that the Iranian president was not informed of the attack on Israel before the strikes began. According to the publication, the strikes were carried out by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Air Force and not the army. Hezbollah reports that in the clashing with the Israeli soldiers who infiltrated the border at the village of Maroun al-Ras, early this morning, Hezbollah claimed to have pushed back Israeli troops from another border town. 4 soldiers have already been killed and some 35 wounded in fighting with Hezbollah in Lebanon so far, Israeli media reports. Militants from the Israeli army's elite EGOZ special forces were ambushed at dawn and retreated back into Israel. Upon hearing of the missiles attacking Israel, the Russian President Vladimir Putin went and held an emergency meeting in Moscow. His motorcade, alongside a column of escorting police, was filmed rushing through the streets of Moscow, as we'll see now. And the Russian PM was in Tehran today, meeting with the Iranian president. And let's not forget about Yemen. The Israelis hit oil storage tanks at the port in that country, and the Yemenis, or the Houthis, shot another US drone down, making this the 10th, I think, drone shot down over the past few months. Of course, this is still developing, and if it escalates to a high degree with Iran being attacked by the West, we'll rush into this studio to report this to you. In the meantime, follow us on X and Telegram to keep updated. And the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov has commented on the killing of the Hezbollah leader. Lavrov said Biden's words about correctness of killing the Hezbollah leader demonstrates the US approach to conflicts. Remember how Hillary Clinton, when they showed the live broadcast of Muhammad Gaddafi covered in blood, was delighted and laughed looking at the screen. Or Madeleine Albright, who, commenting on the processes starting by the American aggression against Iraq, said, well, yes, 400,000 died, but it was worth it. Democracy was worth it.
И то, что вчера произошло в Бейруте, это очередное политическое убийство. И я слышал, что президент Байден сказал, что это было правильное решение. У них, значит, несколько иное отношение к тому, как вести себя в конфликтах и чем руководствоваться. Я помните, как Хиллари Клинтон, когда показывали в прямом эфире окровавленного Муаммара Каддафи, как она восхищалась и хохотала, глядя на экран. Или Мадлен Олбрайт, которая, комментируя процессы, начатые американской агрессией против Ирака, сказала, ну да, 400 тысяч погибло, но это стоило того. Демократия стоила того.
And NATO, and this week in NATO headquarters, they were transferring the powers from Stoltenberg to Rutte. Let's have a look at this as they walk in. And here's Stoltenberg and Rutte, who was greeted with applause at the NATO headquarters. The procedure for transferring powers of the Secretary General from Stoltenberg to Mark Rutte has begun at NATO headquarters. Let's have a look. The new Secretary General of NATO, Rutte, said there can be no lasting security in Europe without a strong, independent Ukraine. Ukraine would not probably exist today as a country without the support of the United States. We must ensure that the survival of Ukraine as a sovereign, independent, democratic country. What is good for Russia's enemies is bad for Russia. Therefore, there can only be a lasting security for Russia if there is a strong, armed and controlled Ukraine by the United States and NATO. Let's listen to him.
And let's be clear, Ukraine likely would not exist as a country today without the US support.
Okay, we'll go to NPR Deutsche Welle. Terry?
And France's new Secretary of State for Europe says Ukraine should not be allowed, should be allowed to launch long-range missiles into Russia. Macron's close ally allowed sending troops to Ukraine. In an interview, Benjamin Hadid calls for the West to stop setting red lines for Ukraine. Sending French ground troops remains a serious option. President Macron tried to maintain a diplomatic course by travelling to Kiev and Moscow, but Russia has decided to close the door to diplomacy, he said. That's news to me. And that is why President Macron believes that we should stop settling red lines for ourselves. When asked if France still does not rule out sending ground troops to Ukraine, Hadid said yes. Of course, NATO troops will enter Ukraine, and of course long-range missiles will fly to Russia, because apart from words, Russia is doing nothing to prevent this. The West is waging a war against Russia. Russia is conducting a special military operation with unspecified goals. In order to prevent a war with NATO, that is, a global nuclear war, Russia must start fighting right now. First of all, Russia must declare its intention to destroy Ukraine and begin doing so by liquidating the military political regime in Ukraine, as we said earlier. As the time moves forward, it's becoming increasingly clear that the final scenario is unfolding before our eyes. Analysts and experts can debate endlessly over the events in the Middle East, but the outcome is becoming harder to deny. The resistance seems either defeated or crippled, broken in spirit. Once I speculated that the resistance might be allowing Israel to unleash its violence unchecked in a strategic attempt to expose its brutality to the world. that exposure did happen, but what I didn't foresee was that the world would witness Israel's actions, its war crimes, its acts of genocide, and simply look the other way. Now we watch as Israeli decapitates the leadership of Hezbollah, one after the other, while the rest of the Middle East sits paralyzed on the sidelines. Fear of US retaliation or the desire to maintain economic stability keeps every player silent. It seems there will be no broader regional war. Israel won't need one. They simply take what they want, kill who they want, and act without restraint, and not a single force seems to willing or able to stop them. It feels as though the chapter in the Middle East is closing, and what will remain is a greater Israel, unchallenged. With this, we now turn to the last obstacle standing between US and the Western hegemony, the final opponent, Russia. As I've said many times, Russia is the last hope for humanity, for freedom. I know these words are confusing to some, especially the experts or armchair analysis, who argue that Russia's system and way of life don't represent freedom in the Western sense. But that's not what I mean. When I say Russia is the last free land, I mean it's the last country with the power to make its own choices. Russia remains Russia, holding on to its history, its customs, its laws, its ideals, and its religion. It's not being forced to assimilate into the Western ideology, not coerced into adopting the US-led order. It is the last place that can stand firm against the tidal wave of conformity sweeping over the world, the same wave that has consumed the Middle East. Russia represents freedom of choice, the freedom to be different from the West. Look around, my friends. Every nation that bends the knee to the US also adopts its ways. Open borders that dilute national identity, woke ideology that divides and confuses, the degradation of family and gender roles that turns people against each other, the worship of self, where every indulgence is justified, every vice embraced as long as it feels good. And what does that lead to? Crime, corruption, collapsing economies, and the population that is increasingly defeated, pacified, and zombified. And then there was one. You don't have to be a fan of Russia to understand the importance of diversity, true diversity in thought, belief, and ways of life. What is a buffet if it only offers one type of food? What is music if every song is the same? What is art if all the paintings are identical? Common sense tells us that the world needs Russia represents, because, most importantly, there is no one left who can stand against the Western onslaught, no one else who can resist the march of NATO and the collective West across the globe. As Israel finishes picking off the last of the resistance, with the US ensuring that no one dares intervene, it won't be long before the West turns its full attention to Russia. With no one else left to challenge them, they will descend upon Russia, determined to remove their last great opponent and claim dominion over the world. But this can't happen. This must not happen. Russia is a nuclear superpower, and if the day comes when the West pushes Russia to the brink, then it tries to eliminate the last bastion of independence, I would ask only one question. What kind of world would exist without Russia? Julian Assange flew into Europe, and he said at this conference, "I'm not free today because the system worked. I'm free because I pled guilty to journalism." In the first statement as a free man at the Council of Europe after 14 years fighting Washington's threat of extradition and more than 5 years of incarceration for exposing US crimes, the truth now seems less discernible, and I regret how much ground has been lost during that time period, how expressing the truth has been undermined, attacked, weakened, and diminished. I see more impunity, secrecy, retaliation for telling the truth, and more censorship. It's not hard to draw the line from the US government's persecution of me. It's crossing the Rubicon by international criminalizing journalism to chilled climate for freedom of expression existing now. Let's watch him.
Be totally clear. I am not free today because the system worked. I am free today after years of incarceration because I pled guilty to journalism. I pled guilty to seeking information from a source. I pled guilty to obtaining information from a source. And I pled guilty to informing the public what that information was. I did not plead guilty to anything else. I hope my testimony today can serve to highlight the weaknesses of the existing safeguards and to help those whose cases are less visible but who are equally vulnerable. As I emerge from the dungeon of Belmarsh, the truth now seems less discernible, and I regret how much ground has been lost during that time period, how expressing the truth has been undermined, attacked, weakened, and diminished. I see more impunity, more secrecy, more retaliation for telling the truth, and more self-censorship. It is hard not to draw a line from the US government's prosecution of me, its crossing the Rubicon by internationally criminalizing journalism, to the chilled climate for freedom of expression that exists now.
Now an update on the Diddy case. In a shocking development, 120 more individuals have stepped forward accusing the rapper Sean Diddy Combs of sexual abuse, with 25 victims being underage. Among the youngest is a 9-year-old and others aged 14 and 15. The alleged abuse reportedly took place at high-profile events, including Diddy's notorious white parties and so-called puppy parties, where other celebrities were involved and recorded on video. Rumours suggest that these tapes, allegedly featuring prominent celebrities, even more influential than Diddy, are being circulated on Hollywood's black market. Let's listen to this.
The biggest secret in the entertainment industry, that really wasn't a secret at all, has finally been revealed to the world. The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward. Our team has had at this point more than 3,285 individuals contact us, with people claiming to have been victimized by Sean Combs. After vetting, we now represent 120 individuals who intend to bring civil claims in civil court against Sean Diddy Combs, as well as claims against many other individuals and entities that we will name as defendants as we file these individual cases. And you should know, to the extent the clients feel comfortable, we also intend to make these individuals available to the authorities, specifically to the FBI. And you should also know a few of them have already been spoken to by the FBI. Now, before we discuss the nature of the claims and claimants themselves, let me comment on the large volume of calls we have received since our first announcement. Even before the indictment of Sean Combs, we had received a small volume of calls and had screened a handful of cases. After the indictment of Sean Combs and the announcement that we were pursuing these claims, the floodgates opened. People who wouldn't otherwise, for a variety of reasons, are now stepping forward to make their voices heard and to pursue justice. But no, most of these people are scared. They fear backlash in their communities. They fear backlash in their own families. They are afraid of retaliation from the perpetrators and their associates. They are rightly afraid for their own personal safety. I expect that through this process, many powerful people will be exposed. Many dirty secrets will be revealed. We know what we are potentially up against. And as is always the case in situations like this, when a celebrity is involved, people can be downright mean and nasty. You would be shocked at the length fans will go, no matter the evidence to the contrary, to defend celebrities they love. I mean, there's a reason for this word fans. They're fanatics. I've personally already been threatened multiple times on social media. And when I agreed to pursue this, I expected as much. This isn't my first rodeo. But victims who step forward to have their voices heard should not be subjected to that kind of conduct. They should not be targeted. I want to say this, and I want to be clear about it. Although we are vetting each call as stringently as we can, I always start with a mindset that I believe victims. I believe victims because I understand the tremendous courage it takes to step forward. So if you're watching this, please hear me. If you're out there and you have been victimized, you are not alone.
Let's get on with some Belarusian news. As Belarus is checking the readiness of the Air Force and Air Defence Forces of the country. The next stage of checking the combat readiness of the Air Force and Air Defence Forces has begun in Belarus. During the check, the main focus will be on the readiness on the ability of the military units and divisions of the Air Force and Air Defence Forces to perform their tasks. The events will include operational deployment of airspace surveillance radars in combat mode and target designation, including 36D6, 64N6, 91N6 from the 300 and S400 air defence systems, target distribution of detected objects and imagery between anti-aircraft missile divisions, and links to the Su-30SM multi-role fighters. The task involved ground-based air communication systems and automated control systems of the Mixed Air Defence Brigade. This will be to practice the formation of network-centric air defence and missile systems and distributed systems for the air defence. The first cargo arrived in Belarus via the Northern Sea Transport Corridor. The trial batch was a 5-ton container of goods for domestic enterprises. Delivery from China took only 35 days. The shipping route passes through 5 seas of the Arctic Ocean and connects the Far Eastern and European ports of Russia into a single transport system. This route is almost twice as short as alternative sea routes. President Alexander Lukashenko promised Belarusians would replace all the goods that are under Western fascist sanctions for Russia. Here is him explaining it to the diplomats.
Our mutual interests can be very diverse, and today they are also dictated by certain pressure on you and me. I mean Western fascist sanctions. As I say to every Russian governor, if something is banned by Belarusian, we will probably be able to replace Western goods for you by a lot of percent.
President Lukashenko also had a meeting with the IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi. He explained that Ukraine is saying Belarus wants to attack Ukraine and take control of Chernobyl. He also discussed with the IEAE Director that this is completely false.
Our Ukrainian comrades and friends in the media devote an extensive amount of time and resources to discussing the Chernobyl nuclear power plant situation, bringing you the claim that supposedly Lukashenko wants to seize it. I just still can't understand why Lukashenko wanted the Chernobyl plant. We have already suffered from what happened after the explosion of this nuclear plant, which, please note, we did not build, we did not maintain. And we were not responsible for its explosion, yet the primary disaster heavily affected a quarter of our territory, and we are still grappling with the consequences of the Chernobyl disaster. So please allow me to absolutely assure you of this. It is complete absurdity that even surprised me. Imagining in our worst nightmare that we would be compelled to take over the Chernobyl station and then bear the responsibility for it is beyond reason. There is absolutely no necessity for such actions on the part of Belarus, and trust me, none from Russia either. There never has been, nor will there ever be.
He then explained to the IAEA Director that Belarus wants to have full cooperation with the organization. Let's listen to him.
I, along with our fellow Belarusians, am truly impressed by the active efforts of your organization recently. We see you often, familiar with your conclusions and statements. We very positively assess your work related to the safety of nuclear power plants, especially those plants that ended up in the zone, actually in the combat zone. Zaporozhye and Kursk nuclear power plants. I have heard numerous positive remarks about you and was fortunate to finally meet you. Many Russian citizens have spoken about your visits and your professional methods for addressing specific issues, which have been highly valued since the organization's inception. we are proud members of this institution. Moreover, we place great importance on our collaboration with you. This is mainly because we have ascended to the status of a nuclear power. We constructed a nuclear facility. Incidentally, I'd like to highlight its ultra-modern features. This is considered the most secure nuclear power plant globally. The difference is that we constructed it from scratch. Figuratively speaking, we had no specialists, no expertise, no prior knowledge regarding nuclear power plant operations, but we acquired everything. We systematically trained specialists on schedule and received substantial assistance from the Russian Federation and the IAEA. Today, we can confidently discuss the safety of our facility and the extensive experience we have gathered in Belarus. Our organization's impact extends globally. Naturally, there has been, and I anticipate there will continue to be, considerable speculation regarding the operation of a nuclear plant. Do you observe this trend in Lithuania? They do not exist not only with regard to our nuclear plant, but also in general in connection with what is happening in our Belarus, but this is already a policy. Let's not talk about it. In general, you should know that we are committed to the security of the world, and we will do everything we can to ensure regional nuclear security. You can be sure of that. We are reasonable people and do not rush into various kinds of adventures.
On October 1st, I went to the Minsk arena, this place, for the latest home ice hockey game for Dynamo Minsk, who was playing the Admirals from Vladivostok in the KH League, or KHL. I met Buba, who has been on the show before, and it was his first time to go to an ice hockey game, and he brought his girlfriend, who was also her first time. The game was fast-paced. The arena was almost full to capacity of 12,500 people, and the crowd was vibrant, loud, and full of passion. The game ended with Dynamo Minsk winning with 7-2. Here is some of that game coming up, and come to the channel sometime tomorrow afternoon, and we'll be posting highlights from that game. And I'll be going again next week, and anyone in Minsk who wants to come to the game, please contact me. I'll go with you. Well, at the stadium, Minsk Arena, for the ice hockey game tonight. More videos soon. Stay tuned. We're coming to the end of the show, and here's our favourite section that most people like that see it. You don't see that in Belarus. Let's get to it. Our first one's in Germany. Unfortunately, a asylum seeker went around stabbing people. This guy.
Daddy!
Killed a few people.
والله لا ياخذ مني حقيقه ابو الوليد لا تضربه لا تضربه يصير حق عليك لا تضربه
وقف وقف لا توقف هي
لا تضربونه
لك ارجع لورا انت وياه لك خليك افتح استنى محلك هي ارجعوا لا يجي الشرطه وبس بس
هلا بيجي البوليس
بس لا حدا يسطعوا
ما تقلبوا يا اخي من تحت شوف ما اجى البوليس
هي لك ارجع خير لك بس لك ارجع لورا لك ارجع لورا انت ويا ولا لك لا لك زد من ايدك يا ولد زد عيف خلاص.
Now we're in Poland, in Krakow, and these are a bunch of furries parading around the street. I wonder if you can register them as emotional support animals. And off to Spain. This entity here was representing Spain for one day. You don't see that in Belarus. In the USA, at a fast food restaurant, still in the USA.
Hey, cop! Cop!
And in New York City. And finally in Vancouver in Canada, this lady definitely needs medical help.
What is this, bro? Broad daylight at Granville Station. This lady's out here naked. What the fuck? Oh my god. Holy shit, what the fuck is that? Dude, we're out here.
And after looking at that, do you think just the Western society is slowly collapsing on itself? Anyway, that's the end of the show. Thanks for tuning in. Please like and share this video to help us grow. And if you see any of those sort of videos, send them to us and we'll play them. Again, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again on Sunday for another show. But tomorrow there will be one for the ice hockey, as we said with we went and saw the game. And also, if you missed it, we did cover the VP debate, and that's already up, that live one. We got up at 4 a.m, or we stayed up and started it at 4 a.m. the other morning, and that's the end of it. So thanks again, hit that thumbs up, bye.
I see that it's wrong. It's wrong because it's like against society.